And last question, and this is from our reporter covering you. Are you willing to accept more media interviews where you can be asked about your father's martial law?
I have never refused any interview on any basis whatsoever. I don't know where that's coming from. When have I refused to answer questions about anything?
So if we ask Hosanna for an interview with you, you would accept?
Well, my comment to other people always is, if you have something new to ask me, mahirap naman if we will be having the same conversation I've been having for 35 years. But of course, I do not know where that comes from. I have never turned down an interview. I have never specified the subjects that we have to talk about.
Well, sir, we'd just like to ask you about, for instance, your conviction of your mother for 7 counts of graft.
I don't.
And your siblings were named beneficiaries of
I misunderstood. Not here and now. I'm here for filing.
Thank you.
I would not file my certificate of candidacy if I was not ready to campaign, if I was not ready to answer all your questions, and so I am ready to answer your questions. I'm ready to campaign, and that's what we're going to do.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Sir.
Thank you.
Sir.
Maraming salamat.
Sir,
There's one more here.
Sir, just one. Yesterday you've mentioned you want to be a unifying leader. And
Yes.
today you've mentioned you don't want to talk about the same question or the same topic for how many years already. And now how would you like to become a unifying leader when there are still these questions running around?
In my view, those questions have all been answered. So we unify now in the face of the COVID crisis, in the face of the economic crisis. That is what I am talking about when I say a unifying leadership. Yan ang kailangan natin ngayon. At siguro ang hangarin ko, ang layunin ko ay makapagbigay ng tinatawag nga na unifying leadership para magkaisa ang mga Pilipinong harapin natin itong COVID, harapin natin ang pag-ahon at pagbukas ng ating ekonomiya. Yun ang aking layunin. Yun ang ating pangarap para dito sa. That is why I call it a unifying leadership, because it requires leadership, a leadership that unifies the country, does not polarize the country.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Total, natanong ko na rin lang kanina, papaulat lang ng TV. Ano na po update dun sa debate? Dadalo po ba si BBM?
We're finalizing. Maybe before the end of the week, we will make a more definitive announcement as to whether we're going to participate or not. But again, as I always say, schedule permitting, we might join, but we have to verify our schedule on that day.
Yung kung may meetings na daw po naganap sa COMELEC, nag-participate po kayo and may concern po ba kayo sa format?
I think we participated during the first meeting. And again, yung sinabi ko dati, dalawang bagay yan. Yung aming schedule, if it will permit, and yung format. Yung dalawang bagay lang naman ang aming tinitingnan. I have yet to see the final format. And again, pag pwede naman kami sa schedule, we have participated in many forums. Equally, if not more difficult forums. And you know that, all of you know that. Again, unless I sound like a broken record, nag-participate kami sa GMA-DCBB, nag-participate kami sa SMNI, nag-participate kami sa DZRH panel interview, and nag-participate kami kay interview ni Boy Abunda at ni Corina Sanchez. Yeah. Oh, congratulations to Attorney George Garcia for his appointment as Commissioner of the Commission on Election.
Sir, an agreement between PCGG and BIR stay the SE order to pay the election?
Sorry?
Yung agreement po ng BIR and PCGG, can it stay the SE order? Pwede po ba yun?
I think a letter has been sent already to the Bureau of Internal Revenue. And that is the best authority to reply to your question and to reply to that letter sent by another presidential candidate.
Sir, pag nanalo si BBM, BIR, PCGG, and OSG will be under him.
We have a campaign to run and we have an election to win. First things first.
So what's the prospect pag nanalo siya? Will PCGG withdraw?
And let me repeat, I have a campaign to run and we have an election to win.
Okay, sir, may nanalo ba yung agreement na yun?
The proper authority to reply is the BIR. So I encourage questions like that to be addressed to the Bureau of Internal Revenue.
Sir, sa kailang tungkol sa 200 plus million
That the amount came from the camp of another rival candidate. So I guess for clarification as to the amount, it should be addressed to the one who raised that subject matter.
Okay, sir, kailan nag-MR? Kailan nag-MR ang public prosecutor? Was it OSG or PCGG na nag-MR?
Public prosecutor, the prosecutors of the Sandigan Bayan.
Ombudsman, OSG, sir, or PCGG?
Yeah, the special prosecutor under the ombudsman.
Kailan po siya nag-MR?
Hindi ko na alam yung eksaktong taon eh.
Sir, okay. Lang kanina dun sa may venue ng May Kawaya, Giginto, meron lang mga food staff, may namimigay ng pagkain. Ano bang yun nyo sa ganon? And would BBM local organizers yun?
No idea. We have no idea.
PDP laban.
Sir, nakabayad na po ba kayo sa estate tax? Thank you, sir. Sir, kasama tayo sa debate.
Salamat po, salamat.
Yun, and estate deficiency taxes that the Supreme Court ordered.
Yes, I think we are talking about elections.
Ma'am, how about the debates, ma'am? What did you tell Mark, your brother po? Did you tell him to attend?
I've said what I've said. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Ma'am, how about the vote, the alleged vote buying in Nueva Ecija? Any comments po?
No. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
So when I went home around midnight, EDSA was overflowing midnight, and that was one radio station. But everybody was tuned to it. The Cardinal had come through, as did Butch Aquino's contingent. And you know, I was in EDSA for the next 3 days. 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th was Cory's swearing in. Different hours of the day. There were highs and lows too in EDSA. It was roller coaster kasi. And then I watched Cory as she was sworn in as President of the Philippines. Wow, what a moment that was. And that was a really high, naku, nagtagumpay na. And then watched Marcos take his oath for the same position with his family, including his wife, who was governor of Metro Manila, cabinet minister, and his son, who was then governor of Ilocos Norte. Alam niyo, si Marcos tried to the very end, in spite of being sick to death, to keep his hold over the Filipino people. And the people were having none of it. So I asked myself, why think of the people power revolt that happened 36 years ago? Anong kaimportansya na anong importansya niyan ngayon? Kasi mga anak, because recent events have given me a sense of déjà vu. We revolted against Marcos then. Are we going to allow his son to be president now? Diyos ko po. They are made of the same cloth. Why did we revolt against Marcos? Because he led the country for 20 years and brought it down to its knees with a collapsed economy, inflation rates at 50%. Foreign debt was close to 100% of GDP. Ngayon, 60% na. Natatakot na ang mga tao. Noon, 100% of GDP na. And what we found later to be a very serious poverty problem. After all that, I mean, he failed dismally. After all that, he still wanted to hold on to power, keeping from his people the fact that he was sick almost to death. He tried to steal the 1986 elections, disregarding the will of the people. At dyan kami ayaw the people refused to be coerced. Now, his son wants to lead the Philippines and tells us that those were the golden years. Diyos ko po. If that were true, why was there a revolt? Why were there so many demonstrations, etc.? A revolt. The only golden years were for his family and their cronies. And maybe, alam niyo, si Mrs. Marcos told me that when she was newly married to Mr. Marcos, she went down to the basement of their house and she saw 7,000 tons of gold in the basement of their house. Ayun siguro yung golden years nila. That's 7 million kilos of gold in the basement. In 1986, si Cory ran against Cory Aquino, widow of a senator of the Republic who was assassinated, if not at his orders, at the orders of those very close to him. Marcos brought out the worst in the Filipino, with his lies, with his cheating, with his stealing, with his world-class corruption, his human rights violation, his rule by law, and abuse of it. Does that sound familiar? In contrast, EDSA and the widow brought out the best in the Filipino. Sharing, caring, sacrificing for the common good, uniting. Now, the son wants to follow his father's footsteps. But now also, thank God, we have another widow, supremely qualified for the presidency to bring out the best in us. Baka naman may diferensya between the father and son. Alam nyo, kita ko lang, where Marcos Sr. was a bar top-notcher, and Marcos Jr. is a college dropout and fails to admit it. Where Marcos Sr. was acknowledged as highly intelligent, Marcos Jr. failed to pass his qualifying exams at Oxford University and also failed in the Wharton School. That's the only difference. I have one last thought, mga kapus, mga anak. I have one last thought, and that is about the widows. Si Cory was marangal, matapat, matapang, and makabayan. So is Lenny. The closest that the Marcoses can get to those four qualities is that their surname starts with the same two letters. And that is EDSA on my mind. We toppled him. We do not want any of his kind back.